I've started to plan out my horse's head shape with the use of crating. So there you can see the geometrical shapes. And then I've built up the form and the features of my creature. And I've then started to work into that form and refine it and get it more accurate. Now I'm going to use pencil crayons. So here what I'm doing is I've started to add some really dark tonal areas. So I always start adding the really dark tonal areas first. Then I build up the mid-tones. And then for the very, very white highlight, you need to leave the paper as white. So I always add the darker tonal areas in. And what I'm doing here is I'm pressing quite hard on my pencil for the very dark areas, and then I'm using less pressure to then work that pencil crayon. Now, if I've taught you before, I always shade and blend my tonal areas in a circular motion with my pencil, not in lines, because it ends up quite scruffy looking, and I can control blending my pencils better with a circular motion. So once I've put the dark areas on, I'm then using less pressure on my pencil to then blend that darker tonal area in with the other shading. What you don't want is a stripy effect with your shading. So if you watch the next couple of minutes, you'll see me building up the tonal areas, starting with the very dark. And then here I'm putting like a mid-tone on, a dark mid-tone, so that I can then start to see where the tonal areas fall. And you'll see me working on one section, then go to another, and then work on another section. And this is just so I can judge the tonal areas in relation to one another and get them more accurate. Now, if you're using pencil crayons, what you want is, so for example, if you're using blue, you want to get all the blues out that you have access to and put them into a tonal range from dark, mid to light, and use them as your different tonal pencils. Now, obviously, you can press harder on a pencil to get a different tone from that colour, but just as a starting point, I would get out all your different colours and use them as the different tones. Now you'll often see me pausing, it's because I'm looking at the picture that I'm copying from, so I know where the tonal areas are. So keep checking and referring to the image that you're drawing from, so you're getting your drawing as accurate as you can. So remember to take your time, because if you make a mistake, it might be quite tricky to rub out your pencil crayon. So remember to take your time, pause, plan what you're going to do before you do it. So here I'm building up the darker tonal areas around the horse's neck, and you can use sort of contouring lines, so flick your lines from the area that you're colouring on and try and sort of contour them round the shape, so it helps create some form. So remember, if your lines are flat, it's going to create that idea that the whatever it is you're drawing is flat. So curve your lines and your shading to echo the shape of whatever creature or part of the animal you're drawing. And just by using those directional lines and shading, it just helps create that form. Now here I've got a blue which acts as like a mid-tone, and here I'm blending it in with my darker blue tone. So as I said, you don't want like a striped effect. So what I'll do is I'll put on the blue, the lighter blue, and then I'll go back and get the darker blue and work the two together. Now, as I said, shade sort of gently and in circular motions, and that way you get a lot better blended pencil crayon. And as I said, don't go too dark to begin with the mid-tones. Now you can see there I've used less pressure on the pencil to create a lighter variation of that colour and tone. And I've left the very white of the page to act as the highlights. So I'm trying to make it sure it's not stripy, so I put more pressure on the pencil, then eased it off, eased it off, eased it off, in order to get that lighter tonal area and blend it more towards the whiter shade. And here I've got my darker blue, and I'm just working that back into and over the lighter blue that I applied. So as I said, you can, rather than commit and put a tone on straight away that's quite dark, build them up, work in another area, then back to that area, and then build your tonal areas up. You can make something darker, but it's very hard to then make an area lighter. So you can see there I'm using the lighter blue pencil and I'm blending it in with my darker blue. Now what I've started to do here is to add some other colours that are similar to the colours that I've already used, so cooler colours. So I've added purple in, and I'm just building up the layering of colour. So here I'm building up the mane of the horse, so I'm putting in some darker lines and planning out the direction that that hair flows in.
Yeah, we're really excited. It's been a very slow start to the season. 4th of July we're opening, following up with 5. I love it. Loads of space. Pop up in the Prosecco.
Not only are we going to liven up your bank account with £80,000, you can also win Jaguar e-Pay. It comes with parking assist and the Jaguar sound system.
You can make 2020 a year to remember for all the right reasons. That's £80,000 in tax-free cash.
And it's always good to turn your paper, so rather than constricting yourself with always having your paper portrait, whatever your area you're working on, turn your paper so it's a lot easier to control your wrist with the direction of lines and shading.
Call 09068 786060. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and phone number to CY24 PO Box 7558 Derby DE10NQ. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close on Friday the 24th of July at 3 p.m. Good luck. Yes, best of luck with that. Now it could finally be time to get
And by using different tones and colours for the mane and different movements of the line, it builds up that idea that there's lots of hair there in the mane. So now I'm going over in purple and building up those wavy lines to create that movement in the hair, and overlapping and changing the direction of the hair.
and online. And I'm really excited today because I'm going to be reunited with our real women models. Yes, by the power of technology, they're all going to be modelling from a home today. So
And just layering those lines up to create some more depth in the hair.
where is she? There she is. Good morning, Sarah. You look fantastic. Now, Sarah is wearing this fab tummy control wrap swimsuit from Marks and Spencer's. It's £28. The sizes go from an 8 to a 22.
You can see here I've started to add some more colours to my shaded areas. I've used like a sort of turquoisey green colour to kind of link in with my blues. So I've got quite a range of colours at the moment, and I've also used different pressures to create the different tonal areas. So I've used a very dark blue, a lighter blue, a purple, and then like a turquoisey green. So try and build up and layer your colours. And here I'm just overlapping and blending my purple in with my lighter blue and dark blue to build up that tonal area. So remember, we focus on the dark and light areas because it creates form. We want our creatures to look realistic and we want them to look three-dimensional. So here I'm working back over with my lighter blue and building up the tonal areas. So remember, you go dark, mid, light, but between them you're going to have different variations of tonal areas. And that's what I want to see in your work. So persevere, it does take time. You can see the circular motions that I use there in my pencil. You might want to use your pencil crayon on the side to shade and to blend, but I prefer using the tip slightly on the side and then using a circular motion. And it's just a way that I can blend and control my pencil better. And here I've got like my turquoisey greeny blue colour, and I'm working back over them tonal areas. So I quite like that when you look at your pencil drawing, you've got all these different subtle changes in colours, and you've layered those colours up. I'm sorry if my filming is out of range sometimes. It's because I'm holding my camera with my left hand and then concentrating on doing the drawing and the work with my right. So I'm sorry if it sort of goes out of range. So remember, you can use directional lines, contouring lines, and this helps create the form and the shape. And as I said, I'll often work on one area of a picture, then go and work on another, and then go back and sort of build up the drawing that way. So you can see here I'm still layering my colours and building up the subtle changes in those colours in my tonal work. And I'll often reflect on the picture and look at the tonal areas and think, well, do I need to change or fix? So as you're going along, judge your work. Don't wait till the end and think, what's the matter with it? Do it as you work, sort of step back from it, reflect on it, look at the pictures and imagery you're drawing from and referring to, look at your work and think, what could you change and fix, or what needs to be improved? And you'll see me doing this a lot in this picture, where I'll work on one area, then go back and work over it again just to improve it. So here I'm just adding in some subtle changes and variations of tone and improving that area. Now sometimes it probably seems that I'm not actually doing a lot when you watch me on certain parts, colouring over and going over areas, but I'm just creating that subtle changes of tone and building up the form. And here is my finished design for my Kelpie. So you have a go, and I can't wait to see what imaginative creatures and mythical creatures you come up with.